Okay, so we're going to focus today on academic honesty, and I'm going to suggest that academic honesty is important for the institution, for the students, and also as promoting professional integrity. So, what do you think this guy is thinking right now?
He doesn't look very happy.
Why is there no one in my audience?
Yeah, that would be because all the students, there's a 3-row barrier for students,
sitting in the
right?
front.
Right. So this is a professor. I don't know where he was, but he caught his students. He discovered that there was some cheating going on because there were identical. There were identical missed, a large number of identical missed questions and things of that nature. And so he's about to give them a riot act about that. And you can tell he's not happy. Now, what about this guy? And there's actually an article online called Cheating at Harvard, in which there was a very large cadre of students that were caught cheating at Harvard. And he doesn't look too unhappy at the moment. Of course, this is a picture for the website. But the article goes on to say that this young man that's pictured here is the class president, in which there was a, I don't know if you remember a few years ago, there was a scandal about Harvard. There was a lot of cheating going on, and so he was the class president. And he went on to argue that it wasn't a problem, that they were just simply taking advantage of collaborative resources. So
It's one way of spending it.
right. So my point about these two slides in connection is that sometimes there's a disconnect between how we feel about cheating and how students feel about cheating, and so that's a big challenge. And so today I wanted to talk about the context of the problem of cheating, different perceptions, effective practices, Blackboard features, and building blocks that can be used to minimize that. And then maybe you could select at least one technological approach to help you minimize that. So, so just in terms of students who admit to cheating, what do you think that number was? So McCabe in 2005, 10 years ago, did a study.
80%.
That was, yeah. The question was not how many do, it was how many admit to it. And so they had 20% admit to cheating, which is still a very large number, you know, because if it really were 80%, we would really be in trouble educationally. But you know, 1 in 5, and so I love this graphic here of this. Yes, those are mathematical equations there, Tim, on the thumbnail. So make sure that
small.
next time you're teaching a course, you
better check the
their
thumbnails.
yeah.
That would have been a left-handed too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you write that small.
Well, I guess if you're right-handed, you can write on your left thumb. But so anyway,
There's a way, I guess.
so students are very savvy in terms of how they might cheat. Now, a year later, just 1 year later, there was another study, and so this would suggest to me that there was maybe some sort of design flaw in the first one because, or the second one. Because now it's, you know, I can't imagine in 1 year it would go up to 86%. But so now, Jane, your 80 plus number is validated. So rest easy. Your predictions are.
Every study wasn't anonymous or confidential, let's just say maybe.
It was an icebreaker study, right? And so All right, and so there's been some other studies that still the number is quite high, and from our perspective, it's really unacceptable. If you go to Google, and I actually checked this because this is the slide deck was made about a year or two ago, but I went to Google and it's still quite a high set of results. It's actually more than 58,000, but it still is in that ballpark of the articles about cheating. And so, you know, we would have thought that a lot of people would be interested in this topic. But anyway, now students and instructors tend to believe that cheating is easier online than it is face-to-face. And so anyway, let's just stop for a moment and have a little bit of conversation about that. Do you think that perception is correct or not? Or is it nuanced in some way? Tim's a nuanced guy, right? What do you think? Is it easier to cheat online?
I think students just think online courses are easier, period.
Mm-hmm.
And then they find out that they're not. And there was that perception when online courses first came out. I don't know if there's now been enough experience with online courses that students are getting it, that online courses are not necessarily easier. Some, the good ones.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why a lot of them are still choosing to enroll in face-to-face courses, because that's easier in comparison to online courses.
Right,
I don't know if that shifted, that pendulum.
that personal responsibility in getting your materials and consuming the information is difficult for some students. They have a difficult time, especially in the freshman levels, of organizing themselves and you know, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's an ongoing thing. Let's think about a face-to-face class for a minute. And you're requiring paper. Common scenario, right? So how would you know if somebody's plagiarized? What is the typical way that papers are submitted to faculty for grading?
Handed in on paper.
Right. Right. So how would, in a classroom, in a standard classroom, traditional classroom, how would the instructor know that a paper that got turned into him or her was plagiarized or contained a significant amount of work that was not that student's?
Usually you can, a lot of times the voice dramatically changes from paragraph to paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
My wife once had one where the background of the paragraph changed color.
And fonts. That's a good thing. Copy, paste. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that would be a telltale. But the thing is, now that's not necessarily going to show up in a printed document.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're going to hand this into you as a printed document. So you're an instructor and you're reading and evaluating these papers. So that right there would go by the wayside. And if the student was savvy enough to just, you know, do a Control A and get everything the same font, then they've got that taken care of. I'll not drag out this too long because we only have an hour, but would a veteran instructor be able to identify, because you said the voice will change, so it doesn't sound like the student, it's too professional, right? Or maybe there's some words in there that you know that they don't know. Okay, so it would require the faculty member to have expertise in identifying that, because if you got a physical piece of paper, right? So so would that be what? Now let's compare that with an online course. The paper is being submitted electronically. Okay. What could you do electronically with that paper that you couldn't do with that paper submission?
But you
Anybody?
just copy paste.
Copy and paste
You just
in,
copy paste and put it in.
Google
And
or
search it, yeah.
in your search engine,
Yeah.
and lo and behold, there the paper is, right?
But we use SafeAssign here.
Right, okay.
So we don't even have to do that.
Right.
We just click on the report and click on the link.
And the great thing about SafeAssign is that it stores the papers at your university in its own file, and so you can find out if that paper has actually been passed on by another student in the same semester or previous semester, because it will identify the student that originated. And so, so I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but when papers are submitted into SafeAssign, they go into a folder that is for your university, and the very first thing that SafeAssign checks is your university's folder. And then it starts looking at the internet, and then it starts looking at other online resources, okay, including library resources, and it starts comparing that and finding that information. So
So I thought that SafeAssign, as I looked them up, it just says another student. Are you saying that you can actually see that student's name?
there's a way to go about seeing the actual student who submitted that. So unless they've changed that, but at least 2 years ago that was right. I was as an instructor, I was able to identify where the paper came from when I found somebody cheating.
Okay, check in on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So all right. So here's the point: is the perception is that cheating occurs much more online, simply because we're not with the student while they're doing this. This is anecdotal, but I've heard this I heard this actually from a professor at the university I was at. She said, because we were talking about this one day, she said, I was in the hallway and I was talking to a colleague, and a student walked by, and I said, "Oh, isn't she a great student?" She named her, gave her name, and the instructor said, "What'd you call her?" And she said, "Get the name again." "That's not so and so. That's," and she gave a different name. And so come to find out that this student was actually taking courses for another student. And so when they came into the room and they called the roll, she
Raise your hand,
Yeah.
maybe.
she said here. And as far as that instructor knew, because I mean, who cards your students? You know, how do you know that that's who it is? So just because they're online doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to cheat more, because they can do that in a face-to-face environment just as well. And a really good cheater can cheat with you standing there watching them. So anyway, and I know that probably sounds a bit self-serving, because it is an online problem, but the perception is not necessarily with meeting reality. Now, 40% admit to helping others cheat. Anybody ever have any married couples in their totally online courses?
Somebody who had one, but I don't.
Yeah.
And,
So-
right now I've got an instructor who has a cohort of students from the same university. And so we're working with assignments and exams and different types of things to try to alleviate that. And with that, if this is an opportunity to put in a request to Blackboard for a change in tests, the default setting under feedback is the box is checked to show the question upon submission.
Mm.
And not a lot of instructors know that or remember that. They need to go in and uncheck that, because the husband takes the test first, can see the questions and whether they got them right or wrong, shows it to the wife, and then they're getting it.
Right.
The next time the wife goes first, and then the husband takes it, so that they even out the grades.
Right.
So, can I put in a request to uncheck that box as a default?
I will pass that on. I can't guarantee there'll be any action, any quick action on that, but.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest challenges that a company like Blackboard has is because I guess if all that's shown is the answer, then what's the question? And so there's some probably some pushback there. But what I would suggest in that situation, this is what I did as an instructor, is that I would very often I taught many totally online courses, and so I would make exams available Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, because some people worked during the week, and the only time they had access to a work, the only computer they had was a work computer. So Friday might be the only time they had access to a computer, and others worked on weekends. But some worked on weekends, and so Friday might be the only time that they had access, and vice versa. So, and students love Sunday tests. That's when they take tests. So I made it available for 3 days, but nobody could see the results until the test was over. And so that would be a setting that I would recommend.
And that would be wonderful, but faculty don't know that they need to uncheck that.
The
Right.
default setting is,
It's what's causing the problems.
And that was one of the things that I was kind of look at here in terms of getting on the course. But anyway, there's lots of settings in the exam itself that so if an instructor just doesn't pay attention to what the settings are, they are opening themselves up for some vulnerabilities. And so, but if you go in and look at the page, you can set that very, very tightly. And what I did was I kept raising the bar to eliminate test cheating. And in the 17 years that I taught online, I only caught a couple of students cheating, and I was able to do it because it was online. And I had a married couple that were cheating. Husband was getting the ace from the wife, and so we had a process we had to go through because it was actually cheating was done. So what I did from there was, anytime I had people with the same last name in my course, I would investigate to see, I could look on my side and see if they were a spouse or whatever, right? And so then I would contact them, and I'd say, okay, here's the parameters. I said, I want you to understand, you're welcome in my class. I don't want to penalize you because you're taking the same class. But here's the thing, is that to make sure that the test is integral and your reputation remains protected, this is the way we're going to go about doing it. And so I would not let them take the exam on the same day. Okay, so that tend to, and then I, on the back end, I didn't release any information until all the tests were taken. Right, and so and here was the other thing, is that I said if you have, I said you can have different scores, but if you have all the same missed questions, I said that's going to tell me something very important, because it's highly unlikely that you would miss the same questions, right? And so there's some things that you can do in there to investigate that. So anyway, here's my point: is that you can take some steps to minimize that, and helping other students can very often happen. Here's another little story about Ed Dante, who at the time this was written a few years ago, he was making $60,000 a year writing papers for students, and he had written over 5,000 pages of academic published work. You know, so it was quality stuff, right? And a lot of his students were graduate students. Okay, so it happens at all levels. Now, here are some countermeasures. We've already talked about a few. Oddly enough, putting an honor code in your syllabus is one of the #1 deterrents to this. Is that if students are alerted to the fact that you understand that they can cheat, and that you have taken measures to prevent that and to penalize them if they were, put that information in your syllabus, and so just that warning alone deters a lot of students. We've already talked about course and assessment design. A little bit more of a drastic is probably too strong of a word, but it's certainly a heightened sort of thing. But in certain kind of cases, a proctored environment is very valuable for high stakes kinds of exams. So a proctored environment, and then we have a number of Blackboard features that we'll talk about. All right, so I've already mentioned this slide. Fewer students cheat when they must interact with the honor code. So what I would do is this: is that I had a syllabus. I had a syllabus quiz that they had to complete, and then they had a document that they had to sign. And in that document, they had to agree that they had read all the policies and that they agreed to all the policies. And some of the policies in there were specifically about, test integrity and things of that nature. So if they have to commit to that and there's something comes up, they can't say, well, I didn't know, because now when I go to the department chair and we have our little powwow with the student, bang, there it is. There's the evidence. So, and then you can combine them with additional steps as well. Just more about the honor code, that reminder is just very powerful to a lot of students. So because most people are honest, right? They really are. But if they see others cheating and getting away with it, then they feel the pressure to do the same. So when I found somebody that was cheating, I did not wink at them. We went the process, because it was my responsibility to make sure that everybody else in the class that was working hard was on a level playing field. It was a safe environment for them to get a quality education, and that was the approach that I took about that. Now, oddly enough, 2/3 of faculty don't even put this information in their syllabus. Now, so a departmental requirement would be very good along these lines. And if you have some integrity policies at campus that you put in the student handbook, I would copy information from the student handbook, put that in there, and then put a link to the entire student handbook, because a lot of students didn't even know there was one, right? So and then get that information in your syllabus, and then 44%. You won't be surprised about this, is when they do discover cheating, they won't do anything about it. Because, have you ever gone through one of these things? With the department chair on up to the dean of students? It is gruesome, right? And so it takes a lot of time. But again, you have to defend. But most of the time, it stops at the department chair. I never had anything that went all the way up to the dean of students, but I've worked with faculty that did. And so it can be a grueling process, but if you have something in your syllabus, you have all the evidence in place, you go to the department chair, here it is, and here's the action that I recommend, right? And the thing is, I seldom recommended the worst, right? But I would work with the department chair to give an appropriate response to the student, because I didn't want to ruin students' careers, but I did want them to understand that this was important. Okay. This is a rather interesting thing, and I have those of you who have taught fully online courses. Have you ever had students contact you and say something wasn't right in course? Or have you heard faculty say something along those lines? I had a student one time that was plagiarizing a discussion posting, and I was going to be grading that weekend, but this occurred like in Wednesday or Thursday of that week, and I got an email from a student that said she quoted me and she put the same thing up that I posted. And so I went in and looked, and sure enough it was. And so I had to have a conversation with a student. So anyway, when you have students working together collaboratively, even though it was a discussion topic and they weren't really working on something together, that they were going to produce some single document or something like that, they were in a collaborative environment, a collaborative learning environment, and they will monitor each other, because I can guarantee you those A and B students, they want to make sure that they do not have a disadvantage. So anyway. Respondents lockdown browser, do you guys have that?
Proctor, you.
We have Proctor.
Oh, and Do we have a lockdown?
We
The
don't
university
use
system does, but
We
we
don't.
don't.
Well, Response Lockdown Browser is a license, and a lot of our customers use that, but there can be some challenges with that as well. And
That's why we don't use it.
yeah, and I understand that. Digital Proctor is more of a fee-based kind of thing, and so, but you wouldn't want to use that except for high stakes kinds of things, I would imagine, because quizzes and things like that it's just going to be too costly because they charge by the exam. Turnitin is an alternative to SafeAssign, but again, that's a license. I'm not really familiar with Criterion very much. ProperU is pretty famous. Software Secure, Respondus Monitor. You guys ever heard of, well, of course you don't do the Respondus Lockdown Browser. So Respondus Monitor is a video. So it invokes the video that's on the computer. And so you're able to see what's going on in the room while the student's taking that exam. And I put this in because a lot of our customers do Respondus Lockdown Browser, but obviously you guys don't do that. What's the product that you guys use?
Proctor U we have.
Okay. Now, so let's go back to that in just a moment. What do you? This is for me because I tried to get this at a university where I was at, and they didn't want to go that route. What led you guys to that decision? What are the advantages?
For ProctorU,
Yeah.
well, we were using an in-house proctoring system, and I think that it wasn't quite meeting our needs, so I believe we did we do an RFP?
Yeah, we did an RFP
And
and had faculty input on it.
yeah,
I think part of the challenges were that students were still finding it difficult to find some proctors in certain areas of the country or part of their jobs, not the military, or different types of things. So and some were already paying for proctors. So we offered this in addition to, it's not, everything doesn't go through ProctorU. Students could find their own proctors yet. And so we do have a process, we've got a policy and it's embedded into our online course template. So every semester when they get their course, it has that information in there in the online course template. And then one of our instructional designers will go in there and she'll do some checking and updating if they've got some requests for exams to be proctored there. And we did used to have a couple of separate processes for getting proctors, but we're streamlining it more. There's been a group of us at SILT that have worked together to streamline it more. We still need to do some streamlining with our anytime, anyplace courses, our extended learning courses, which is kind of on a different process.
Do you leave quizzes unproctored and it's more the high stakes like midterms and
Yes.
finals and things of that nature?
Yes. And generally, as designers, our recommendations usually to instructors are to reduce the number of high stakes assessments.
Right.
And to have other kinds of applications and evidence-based assessments in
Absolutely.
classes.
Right. I totally agree. And that's basically some of the things that we talk about here. I'm going to just breeze through these lockdown browser things because they really don't apply to you guys. And we'll jump over here to some features within Blackboard. This particular slide, and I don't know if I can get to my website or not. Yeah, it finally came up, so good. I'll go to that here in a moment. I want to get through that slide real quick, a couple of slides. Now, do faculty are faculty able to make changes and stuff to their own courses, right, and things of that nature? So under the submission details, it expands that out, and so this is where SafeAssign will be used. You guys have already indicated that you use that. Are you getting any kind of pushback from faculty on this kind of thing?
I would say the only pushback is that some colleges feel that SafeAssign doesn't check into the appropriate or correct databases for their particular colleges. I think nursing had a separate
Right.
license would turn it in because they access different databases.
Right. And I think that's a valid concern. Safe Assign is it's obviously a free product that Blackboard provides. Turn it in as a license sort of thing, and so it's going to capture the needs for a lot of folks, but there's going to be some redesign to Safe Assign for the Ultra environment, but as you all know, there are so many databases out there that are especially unique to different colleges that partnering with all those and getting access licenses, because that's what Safe Assign has to license with those different libraries and to get access on. So it would shift it to a fee-based kind of product, and so one reason that we've avoided that as a company is to keep it available for, especially for the institutions that small institutions that have a financial burden, and so that's a lot about that. And you're familiar with if you had drafts, how you would go about changing all that. So I won't get into that. All right, so well, maybe I can just do the slides and not have to go to a lot of times, because it's a different crowd in here except for Tim. I think Tim, you're you guys are familiar with this interface and all that sort of stuff. So I like to do a live sort of thing when I have some faculty. But anyway, multiple attempts versus a single attempt. Do many of your faculty do a single attempt on these kinds of things, or they do a multiple attempt structure at all?
It varies. I think that if it's proctored, it's usually a single attempt.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, there'd be more high stakes. That makes sense.
Well, I usually have mine, it's password protected, but then I allow unlimited attempts just so that if they screw it up, the proctor can get back in there and just take care of it.
Right, right. Can you, what are some scenarios that you think would be advantageous for multiple attempts? Would that reduce or increase cheating, do you think? There's a couple of different questions there. So,
I think, at least I like to think that if you have a proctor that knows the password, then multiple attempts would not affect that. Obviously, if there's no password and the student can just get in whenever, then unlimited attempts would allow them unlimited attempts. So then, I don't know if I would even call that cheating if you're specifically allowing unlimited attempts. Then.
well, and of course, there's two different kinds of assessments. There's formative assessments and there's summative assessments, and so the things that we typically think of in terms of exams are summative assessments. As I say, we're going to study Unit 1, and then in 3 weeks we're going to have a test, right? Unit 2, another 4 weeks we're going to have a test, and so forth. And so that would be an assessment that comes at the end of the unit where you're evaluating the student. But one of the things that Blackboard has done, which I've found to be very useful as a customer and as an instructor, was it allowed me to move very easily into formative assessments, and I could give students multiple attempts at something leading up to other kinds of projects. And so, and I actually got this idea at Higher Learning Commission conference of all places. I was invited by some people at the college I was at to attend, and there was some professors, some psychology professors from Arizona State University, and so they were presenting on their findings, and so they were teaching entry-level psychology, and they were really fed up with the dismal performance that freshmen and sophomores had in this course. And so they decided to try an experiment, and they moved to multiple attempts on quizzes, and then they used other kinds of assessment opportunities. They were in Blackboard. So the nitty gritty of it was this: is that they had unlimited attempts while the unit was being they had unlimited attempts while the unit of study was active. And you would think, well, then everybody's going to get an A. Well, not everybody does get an A because people, but and then so for each quiz, there was a cumulative, there was a comprehensive exam at the end of the semester. Okay, and so each unit had some individual pieces about that. So bottom line was this: is that you need a mechanism. Sorry. You need a mechanism to help students develop the lower end of Bloom's taxonomy so that they can do a better job with other kinds of assessments. So what I did was this: I used based on their findings, I went in and I talked to the dean of instruction first. And I said, this is what I heard, and she loved the idea, and she said, let's give it a try. So students could take the quiz, the exam, over and over again, the entire unit of study. But then I had a discussion question that was very robust and very challenging for that unit of study. Because this is what I realized I was doing. Before, I said, okay, here's our content, we're going to study this, and here's the discussions, and then at the end of this unit, we're going to have an exam. So what I was doing was I was asking students to do the upper end of Bloom's taxonomy before they really had a good grasp of the lower end of Bloom's taxonomy. And so my test at the end was measuring the lower end of Bloom's taxonomy, but my discussion postings were measuring the upper end. So I inverted that, let them start taking the test from day one, and then they had very challenging discussion questions at the end of the unit that they had about 3 or 4 days to reply to. Now, what happened was this: was that now because they had a very robust understanding of the terms and the people and things of the content, their discussions became very good. And as I said in the previous session, I got to where with some of my courses that the discussions in class were not nearly as good as those that were online, and that was in part for that reason. All right, well, I feel like I'm losing a lot of time, running out of time here. So time tests are very good, but you can set the attempts. And here's the thing about a multiple attempt thing is that with a multiple attempt, it is a lower stake, and so it reduces cheating. And a one attempt is a higher stake, higher points, and it increases the pressure for students to cheat. So it's just the opposite of what you think it might be. Timing test. Do some of your faculty understand that they can set the auto submit on? And so at the end of the time, it's going to submit no matter what.
We generally turn that off.
Mm-hmm. But here's why that raises the integrity bar is that if you leave that off, the student can continue on the exam, and so you have to go in manually look to see if they have exceeded their time and things of that nature, because they can submit after the timing is over with. So if you have this on, it will submit, and so you're not going to get somebody fudging on the time and the questions and things of that nature.
When we've looked at some of the numbers, at least the instructors that I've looked at, it's generally been under a minute that they get that 1 minute warning and they say, okay, I need to hurry and get done. And they just Hello,
come on in, have a seat. you do pools and random blocks. Okay, another great way for doing all that. And this is especially useful in formative assessments, where you're wanting students to understand information that's going to develop over that unit of time. And so what I would do is I would do random blocks, and would pull a certain number of questions from the grouping, and so everybody's being evaluated from the same test domain, but not everybody is getting the exact same test. So that's a fairness question that people sometimes want to have. Is it fair for everybody to have the exact same test, or is it fair for everybody to be tested over the same domain? And so with the random questions, you can make sure that different students have different questions, so long as they're coming from the same test domain. Availability, do you guys work with this any, do they vary by instructor? And do you guys build that, or you just train them on this?
They do it themselves.
Yes.
Okay. We talked a little bit about this, auto submit, dates, things of that nature. Test availability exceptions, feedback options, and here's where I would be making that, if you want students to get information like an informative situation, you want them to get information right away. It could be after the submission, but if it's more of a high stakes kind of thing, and you don't want everybody to have that information in advance, then you can set that to after the due date is over with. And so, and then you have a variety of test options right there. In terms of the answers, you want them to see all answers, just the correct answers, or just the submitted ones?
The default is what we want to change.
I'm sorry?
The default there is what we would like to change.
Yes, yeah. So you would like submitted maybe on the answers?
No, the check mark on your score per
Just take them
question
all,
to
just
take
take
it
all the
off.
check marks off, and then if,
Right.
And force the instructor to make the choice.
yeah, and then if the instructor doesn't check anything, just say, hey, you do realize you're not gonna let them see anything useful.
Right. Adaptive release is another way to raise the bar. They have to achieve a certain thing until they can go on.
Now, I've always found it annoying to use adaptive, especially for dates adaptive release, because if you want one person to get it a day early or a day late, suddenly you have to expand the entire window and then shrink it down for everybody but that one person. And so it ends up just being this huge hassle. And so I end up finding it easier that if one person wants it a day early or a day late, I just send it to that one person.
You, in the interface that's been out there in the last couple of years, you can go in and you can target a specific individual. And so and you can give them different times as well. And so with the ADA requirements, so for example, somebody has an accommodation for 150%. It used to be that we had to have 2 different tests and 2 different grade columns, and you had to sum that up, and all that kind of stuff. It was a lot of fun. So that's now in a single column environment. So. Okay. Marked reviewed is something that some people think is useful. I struggle with it myself. So, why it comes up in this one is because if a student is marking this, if they've already seen it, they are in a very minimal sort of way telling you they read it, or at least they think that that's what they're doing. So, but they're really just checking that box. So, developing an assessment strategy and at the level at which you want to raise that bar. So cheating cannot be eliminated in any environment. You're going to have cheating in a physical environment. You're going to have cheating in an online environment. But what you can do in an online environment, you can continue to raise the cheating bar. So that it makes it very, very difficult for students to cheat, and then when they do, you can catch that very easily. So that's really the strategy that I would present to your faculty. So technology can help fight cheating rather than expand it. Students should be aware of resources that writing centers, things of that nature, training about plagiarism and time management, copyright and all that, and then relevant codes and policies in place in your syllabus so that you can follow that up. Okay, any additional thoughts? Well, here's some, there's a lot of references that are available. I'm sure you can find a number of things as in your academic library. So thank you very much.